Welcome back. Glad to have you here. This week, I got a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Fader, sports psychologist extraordinaire, works with big teams, works with big people, and works with the mind. How do we look at winning? How do we look at being our best and staying sane and loving ourselves? And all of the things that go into this kind of binary world of winners and losers and how we can learn from our mistakes. Powerful stuff, really great interview. I know you're going to enjoy it. The following week, I have Angel Hanscom talking about getting our kids out in the dirt, near and dear to my heart. Again, I've been on a tear, getting some great interviews for you, and I know you're going to enjoy them. Enjoy Jonathan Fader. It's one of those things where, you know, I was pretty high on the philosophy when I came down from the mountain, and I realized, you know, people got normal lives. And, you know, what does a normal person got to do to just kind of, you know, not freak out and lose it and, you know, duck out for 40 minutes for from their kid's birthday to, you know, handle business. And that's life. You know what I mean? That's life. So we're just going to roll straight in here. I'll do all my bumpers and stuff later. And I'm so stoked about the work that you do because you get to see it, right? With high performance individuals, like they actually care and they need to care. They're like the thoroughbred horse that everyone wants to like make sure, you know, performs. And the fact that performance psychology has made it into that realm doesn't surprise me at all. But who are the front runners? Like, how do we get into all this?
Well, I think, you know, it depends where you're looking. But I think, you know, some of the front runners are people like, you know, Harvey Dorfman, who really brought psychology into baseball. You know, Charlie Mayer, Ken Ravizza. They're guys that, you know, really said, hey, look, you know, there's an upside to focusing on the mental game, on really learning how to be really present in the present moment. And that really helps high performers to not only achieve their best, but to have higher satisfaction in a very high pressure environment. So I think those guys are guys that really inspired me.
Yep. So this world of sports psychology is interesting because, you know, the goal is to win, right? But there's also like winning in life, right? So, you know, not everyone listening to this and watching this is, you know, a paid athlete, but we all have this kind of dopaminergic system. We all have our success metrics. We all have things that we need to kind of, you know, count on the scoreboard. So what can we learn from these top athletes and how they roll and kind of bring that into our lives?
I love what you said. And what I love about it is that you really understand that, you know, just because we're not competing in front of 40,000, 50,000 fans, we're still competing. We're competing certainly against the people in our jobs, but we're really competing against ourselves. And I think you put it well. Yeah, part of it is winning, but part of it is really feeling like, you know, I have this gift, this time here, this time to connect with people, this time to be with others. And, you know, winning for me is a lot about using that time in a way that feels fulfilling to you and that for some people feels fulfilling to the world. And so I think that performance psychology can be one of the various tools that you can use to find greater fulfillment in your life as well as having hopefully better results.
Yeah, you know, it's a hell of a roller coaster ride because, you know, you also lose, right? And so that's where a lot of these guys get tripped up. And, you know, it's amazing to see how much the mental game will impact every facet of our lives. And these guys, you see it because it's like, you know, here I am, I'm on the line, I got the game-winning free throw, you know, do or die. And, you know, let's not talk about pressure, right? Like that's as much pressure as you can put on a person, and these people have to kind of dismiss all that and stay in that zone, whatever we're gonna define as that zone, if you will, and just do what it is that they've trained to do, and putting aside all of the nerves, putting aside all the kind of psychological, you know, noise that comes up, that ain't easy. So we admire them, right? But we have the same challenges every freaking day of our lives, right? Like with every single thing we do.
No doubt, no doubt. And, you know, the challenges are that, you know, we get put in these positions where we're really stressed out about, as you said, the results, stressed out about losing, and sometimes what I do with players is I try to use different kind of language. For example, I'll talk about, instead of losing, or I'll just talk about unwanted results. And the reason I say that is because losing is sort of is a idea that we put on ourselves. Most athletes get a chance, and most of us get a chance to play another game, to meet another person. And so I think actually what I try to do is I try to teach a mindset that says to people, if I got results that I didn't want, what can I learn from it? What can I learn about my experience? What can I learn about the world? Rather than saying, what I'm going to learn from it by default is that I suck or I'm unable. And so I try to work with people to cultivate that mindset. If I flood this interview with you and I feel like I did a terrible job, I misspeak, I'm lost in it, I don't understand your questions, I could just say I suck, or I could say, okay, what can I learn from it? What could be different about my preparation next time? What could be different about the way I listen to your questions about losing and winning? Rather than saying, hey, let me just sit here and judge myself, because fundamentally we're naturally judgmental. I mean, we really look for the things that are wrong a lot, and a lot of what the utility in a show like yours and focusing on the limitless and on meditation and all these things that we do and on what makes people great, it helps you to take your mind off of what's wrong and focus on what's right.
I love it. It's so, there's this element of mindfulness that we're talking about that's kind of like an undercurrent of, just observing what it is and observing where we're at without the charge of judgment, right? Win, lose, we succeed, they fail, that kind of stuff. And that allows us to then grow, right? I'm assuming you're working with your athletes to then understand that they're their own worst enemy, but that's an opportunity versus a failure. And so, I think that script is just so strong in so many people. I mean, I have thousands of people in my online communities, and that script right there is just the punisher, right? Like, I'm such a loser, I failed. And so how do we get out of that mess? Like, it's such a ball of twine, but you do this with some of the top athletes in the world, so you see it like at the razor's edge.
Yeah, well, you put it well. We all have that script. And I really believe that script is a foundational part of being human. That, our nervous system evolved over 600,000 years. And it was designed to notice what's wrong. We needed to notice what's wrong to climb out of that primordial gunk. To run away from the saber-toothed tiger, you got to know that it's there. We're looking for that. We're always looking for what's wrong. Oh my God, how am I going to get hurt here in this relationship, in this job, in this competitive event? How am I going to get hurt? And I think fundamentally, as you said, it's about accepting that, number one, accepting that I have that flaw, that human flaw. It's a beautiful flaw, but it's dangerous. And accepting it and saying to yourself, having self-compassion. So one of the analogies that I borrow from the acceptance and commitment community and mindfulness is the idea of quicksand, right? That, to fight those thoughts is like battling quicksand, right? You sink deeper into it. Or another way to think about it, I work with surfers, so it's like fighting that rip curl, fighting that rip current that's dragging you out. No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to swim against it. You want to swim, sideways. Find a way where there's less resistance. For me and for the high performance athletes and performers in other fields, I find that there's less resistance when you first accept it and say, okay, I'm having that. And then trying to shift it, but shifting it with grace. And the grace is by focusing on your breathing. Grace is by allowing it to pass and noticing that all thoughts have a beginning, middle, and an end, not fighting it. Practicing an act of gratitude. Taking a moment to say, as much as this hurts, I'm thankful to have this moment. As much as this hurts and as much as this is a disappointment, I'm grateful for my team. I'm grateful for my physical health. It can kind of shift things. I'm grateful for my relationship with my child, for my ability to compete at the highest level. I'm grateful for these fans. I'm grateful for the fact that, despite the fact that I failed my boss, that they're supportive of me. I'm grateful for the fact that I have a challenging career. To be able to find a shift in your thinking and allow that to move you. I think those are ways that you act with failure in a graceful way.
Do you pre-program that when someone's say automatic kind of negative thoughts pop up, and it's just like, ah shit, I chunked it, I failed. They're all gonna judge me. Like, where does that mindfulness come in? Where they go, no, close that window, open up the gratefulness app. Like, I need to shift this script. Like, their mindfulness and their awareness needs to be there at a certain place to intercept that, and then bring on some other programming. I'm just curious about, at what level they get it and how you train it for your athletes, and then, they're all just people, right?
Well, I think that's a really sophisticated question because, that shift is a delicate one, I think, and it's hard. I mean, it's really hard. And, it's easy for me to say on the sidelines of a game where 50,000 are watching and maybe millions are watching on TV, like, hey, just shift it. I think a lot of coaches in my field and other coaches just say, hey, just shift it. But I think you're pointing out that it's really difficult. And one of the ways I think about it is if you've ever surfed or you've ever ridden a bicycle or a motorcycle, and you're trying to turn, what most coaches will tell you is look through the turn. Look to the place that you want to go. Don't look at where you don't want to. Look at where you want to go, and your body's going to kind of follow. So the first precept I try to work on with athletes is, first of all, let's not focus on what we don't want you to do or think about. Let's focus on what we do want you to think about. Because if we can focus on what the adjustment is that we're trying to make, it's much easier than trying not to do something. Mm-hmm. So in other words, let's not focus on trying to not think negatively. Let's just try to focus on a center that you're going to direct your attention to. For me, I've had a lot of success with athletes and high performers in medicine and finance on focusing on teaching very, very basic breathing techniques, the same ones that, work in yoga and meditation. Because when someone is really focusing on their breathing, and as you said, drills it, has a routine around it, it's really hard to do that and at the same time worry about what might go wrong. If you're really getting good at being in that moment and practicing that breath, or practicing a routine, it doesn't have to be breathing. It could be, for example, picking a focal point, having a mantra, things that really are routine that become really facile and easy to do. It helps. If a guy's at a trading desk or at his comm and or a woman and they're trying to trade and all of a sudden something turns and the market turns and everything goes to crap, well, it's helpful to know ahead of time what are you going to do to keep yourself from letting that moment capture your soul and drag you. To know, okay, when that happens, this is how I center myself. This is what I do. And I don't advocate for any particular thing. I know there's some things that work, like I've suggested, but people have surprised me. Some people go to the bathroom and flush the toilet and watch the water go down the drain. I mean, there's many ways to do this that can shift people. Some people get up and look at a picture of their kids. And I think what's important is that to be portable and it has to be directed towards the kind of environment. If you're a Navy SEAL dropping into a different country, you can't, look at a picture of your kid. It has to be all in your mind. It has to be quick. If you're a firefighter, I work with a lot of firefighters, you don't have time to really, investigate your breathing, right? It has to be a routine that's very, very clean. So, for example, it could be just unhooking or hooking something that reminds you of what your focus is. So, those things, in my experience, I've had a lot of success with people about that. And the success is not just high performance. It's that they enjoy their experience more in their job.
So how much of this is kind of on the court versus off the court? And by court, I mean whether you're a Wall Street trader, a firefighter, or any of this, is, for me, like when I teach meditation, it's like, look, if the shit's hit the fan and that's the first time you're going to try meditation, chances are it's going to be a little iffy, right? And so the reason you sit on your cushion and park your ass there and do all the things that you do is so that you know that state and you can recall it when it comes. So, how much of this work do we need to do? Because, look, anxiety is there, stress is there. That stuff isn't going away, right?
I love that question. And the reason I love it is because, if you don't have something that's natural for you, you're going to react in the way that you're accustomed to react. If you're in a relationship with a person, your partner, and you just learned a way of reacting when they do something you don't like, unless you drill another way to react, you're going to just do it the same way. And so I definitely believe that. I believe that, routines are essential. And the more that you're able to drill a routine, the more it's going to come very quickly in a moment of adversity. if I know and I've practiced, this is how I'm going to react in this scenario, whether I'm on a basketball court or whether I'm at home talking to my kids. If I practice it ahead of time and I know what I'm going to do ahead of time, it's really contingency management. You're really planning for that contingency. And we do what we're accustomed to do. And one of the things I say, and I think it's related a little bit to what you're talking about, is, performance psychology and what we call mental conditioning is different than traditional psychology. And the difference is that in traditional psychology, a lot of times we wait for things to get kind of broken before we attempt to fix them. We wait for stuff to get messed up and for us to be really stressed out. And performance psychology isn't about that. I don't wait for athletes to feel off their game to start working with them. My idea is we're conditioning you to really be ready for adversity. And so that's a big difference. And I actually talk about it. One of the ways I talk to athletes about it is I say, like, people's minds are like fish tanks. And that if you just wait and you don't add a pH balance and add the correct water and filter it and all this stuff, well, it starts to build up gunk. Even the healthiest brains are going to build up gunk. And we all have a little gunk in our fish tank. And if you're going to be wanting to perform at a high level, either in sports or any aspect of life, it's important to be conditioned to make sure that water in the fish tank has the right pH balance, that you're really working to purify it. And whatever way that works for you, meditation, breathing, thought restructuring, building a routine, visualization, running, but doing things that help you to clean out that fish tank. So when you get to that moment, and it's your chance to be at the free throw line, to be up to bat, that you're really ready for it.
I love that. That's an example I've used, which is similar but different, is flossing. Right? You do it so you don't have to go get drilled in the mouth and get to that place where your hygiene is messed up. Exactly. This is proactive, and shows like yours are excellent because they're really, I think your listeners are listeners who are saying, hey, I want to enjoy this time, this gift. I really want to. I want to enjoy this gift. This is a gift, and I want to find resources that are, going to help me to enjoy this gift. Totally. And I that that flossing analogy or the fish tank is really about saying, hey, listen, there are skills, and I call them kind of curls for the brain. There are exercises that I can do, very simple things that are going to keep me flossed. They keep all the gunk out of my teeth. So, not only do I avoid the dentist, but I have a bright smile. Totally. Which actually takes care of all my other success metrics. It attracted me a good mate. It got you know what I mean, like all the other things that people stress about. So
totally.
Yeah, it's great. This is kind of like pay it forward so that you don't get into crisis mode thinking, which I think a lot of people are just waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time, and so it's
1,000%. 1,000%.
Yep. So you mentioned something in your book, and there's so many things. Like I talked to you forever, called motivational interviewing, and you work with a lot of doctors, law enforcement on this, and it's about motivating others. And I'd love for you to unpack this because a lot of us, like for me as an ex-physician, like there's all of these things that you can impart on somebody, and you could tell them what to do, they're still not doing it. So there's this huge dissonance there.
So I am honored that you read the book in that detail, and I have to say, of all the things that I entered in that book, I'm one of the things I'm most passionate about is this technique or this way of being called motivational interviewing. And the reason I'm really passionate about it is because it is very much a scientifically supported way of talking to another person about the possibility of change. And fundamentally, the ideas behind it are this. When someone's ambivalent about changing, whether that's about smoking, drinking, using drugs, or about exercise, or even what you want them to do at work, the more that you instruct, beg, tell them, message them about your agenda, why you want them to do it, generally speaking, what that does is it elicits psychological reactance. And our urge is when we see something that's wrong, as a physician or as a counselor, as a boss, as a dad, as a husband, as a partner, we want to say, look, you need to do this because. But motivational interviewing says, actually, it's just the opposite. What helps people to change when they're ambivalent about change is number one, to really show them you understand how difficult it can be to change. If you can do that as a beginning to a conversation, that person's going to want to talk to you and talk to you honestly about change. And number two is to figure out what's in it for them. What's their intrinsic motivation? Why would they want to change? Not why you think they should. And so Bill Miller and Steve Rolnick developed this technique. They're two psychologists, and they applied it first to addictions. But as you're saying, it really has been applied to things like law enforcement. And Steve Rolnick is really now beginning to think about it and apply it to sports as well. And so I've definitely used it in sports as a way of saying, you know what I want this person to do isn't as important as what they want to do. And I fundamentally believe that. Even if I know I'm right, it's their life. So if I know that mental skills training or mental conditioning is going to help this athlete, this basketball player, this football player, really help their game, help them achieve their goals, it doesn't matter if the guy in front of me or the woman in front of me doesn't think it's important. So this is this evidence-based way of talking to people about their ambivalence, resolving their ambivalence to accept something, to accept change, or to engage in a conversation about the possibility for change.
And statistically speaking, how much better are we doing with this technique? I mean, you're meeting them where they're at. And so, the number one subject in everyone's life is themselves. And so, you've already crossed the bridge, you're over there, and then you walk back over with them. Are you seeing it is this a slam dunk? Is it really kind of changing the game in sports psychology?
It's definitely changing the game of life. And just even to hear you ask the questions and hear you starting using the words motivational interviewing and sports psychology is exciting. I've done a couple of presentations at the Association for Applied Sports Psychology about it, and there's growing interest. Like I said, Steve Rolnick, the founder, is starting to talk about it more. It's really appearing in sports more. As far as the science behind it, what you're asking about, there's a ton of scientific evidence that it's an effective technique in a wide variety of disciplines, law enforcement and medicine and psychology in general. And there's emerging research about using it in sport, but we're really at an exciting forefront of using it in sport and in sports psychology, because if someone doesn't want to do what you think is right, you're stuck. If you're a coach, you're a boss, and someone really fundamentally doesn't want to do, you certainly can impose your will, but it's going to get done with less gusto and less commitment than if you really find a way to help someone to talk about why they would want to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's an art. It takes practice, and it's difficult, but I found it to be clinically and effective, and just effective in conversations. And also, it's allowed me to enjoy conversations with people. I'm big about enjoyment, and life is too short to focus just on winning. Winning's important, and it's important if you're in sports. But you're not going to be a player for your whole life. And everybody I talk to, when they finish their career, talks about, I wish I'd enjoyed it more. As soon as I get off this podcast, I'm going to say, hey, I wish I really had more time to experience that. That was fun. Mm-hmm. So I really try to encourage that. And I think motivational interviewing has helped me to do that, because it's allowed me to focus on the relationship. As you said at the beginning of our discussion, humans first.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a heart-to-heart connection in an interaction, meeting someone where they're at, instead of this didactic, hear me and listen to me. I'm the doctor, I'm the teacher, I'm the whatever, right? It seems like, and for me, you got me tripping on that actually, because as I was thinking about it, I'm a filmmaker, and so it's like, how the hell do I do this with an audience of millions? And the question is, you can still use social media and engagement to kind of get their sentiment. But yeah, this is the future of kind of two-way communications, and I think it's changed a lot. There's another part here, and I know we're low on time, and I really want to unpack this.
Listen, man, I'm happy to talk to you more. So this could just be, hopefully it's the first of many opportunities we get to exchange ideas. Your questions are really sophisticated, and I think you really clearly, I knew this about you, but I really feel like your questions come from a part of really wanting to help people to enjoy things and to be connected. So I'd love to continue our conversation.
Cheers, brother. Cool. Awesome. Then let's flow. Thoughts and feelings. And the separation of thoughts and feelings, you kind of get into the differences, and we want to talk about how to separate those to understand kind of the inner anatomy psychologically, so that then we can actually stand a chance to affect change, right? So if you could tease that out a little bit, let's play there in that sandbox for a minute.
Fundamentally, what I hear more than anything from humans is, I feel like I can't do it. And what I say to everybody is that's not a feeling. Okay? A feeling is an emotive word. Sad, scared, angry, overwhelmed. I'll consider that a feeling. So, well, what is it? Well, I can't do it as a thought. And that's important because you can't directly change a feeling. I can't say to someone, don't feel sad. Don't feel overwhelmed. I mean, when I joke around with people, I say that's for your friends and family to tell you that. I'm never going to tell you that. I'm never going to tell you don't feel sad. What I will say is, wait a second. You can't do something? That's a thought. Thoughts are subject to investigation and subject to looking at where we're getting the data for these thoughts. We have thoughts all the time, and a lot of them are baseless. They're just a result of that kind of what I call a monkey brain, that scared part of ourselves that's looking for what's wrong, not for what's right. And someone tells me I can't do it, I say, wait a second. Let's look at the evidence that may be wrong. And most of the time people can point out things that, well, I mean, this is evidence that I could do it, or that I could succeed, or I could challenge that thing, or I could look at it differently. So it's really helpful, I think, in life to establish a difference. When someone says, well, I feel like they don't like me. That's not a feeling. Maybe you feel scared, but feeling like someone doesn't like you, if you're saying, I think they don't like me, well, that's great. We can investigate that. What makes you think? And sometimes we find out that you're right. Like there's evidence that the person doesn't like you, and then we think about what can be changed in terms of a behavior. But it's dangerous to look at a thought and say it's a feeling, because feelings can't really be changed. They're an outcome fundamentally when you think about it. They just are, right? They just exist. Whereas thoughts are ones that we can look at and really have much more direct control. They're subject to our executive functioning, where feelings sometimes come from a deeper part of our old brain.
It's when you say this, it kind of makes me think of how little kind of internal literacy we have as a culture to even kind of be able to separate those two and be able to even stand a chance against the barrage of shit that's kind of constantly swarming up there, and trying to stop feelings and bottle feelings and all these types of things that we know don't work. And so in a performance sense, you got a guy that's going out on the court, he's up to bat, this is the game, you got all these types of things, and then the feelings come up. I mean, I could feel anxious, I could feel nervous, there's all sorts of feelings that are going to come up naturally, right? But then there's the negative thoughts as well. So is there some sort of formula, like you get in there and you have them dissect that at the moment of, like, how do you disarm that when, it's already, the blood's starting to boil?
Well, first of all, that's actually, the question's helpful to me, because I think I can illustrate a distinction that I've experienced with elite players on the court, off the court, is that when someone is in a state where they're really feeling very overwhelmed, I don't think thoughts are very helpful. I think behaviors are more helpful. So if someone's in a state where they feel like the game is on the line, or they're doing a presentation, and I don't think it's helpful to actually add stuff to your brain, basically. I think it's helpful to make your body do things. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're on the basketball court, you're at the free throw line, and the game is on the line. You're feeling a sense like overwhelmed. I think it's much more helpful to focus on things like blinking your eyes before you take the shot, like focusing on reducing your chest breathing, because sometimes adding thoughts can actually make it more complicated, like that quicksand feeling I talked to you before. I think it's really helpful to look at your thoughts later and make sure that you're not creating a story about yourself that's compounding and building a way to have self-esteem or lack thereof. So I think, at game time or in the moment, it's really helpful, as we talked about, to have routines, to have things that can quiet your mind and take your brain away from the thinking world and into just being in yourself and having self-compassion. If I recommend any thoughts, it's a more centering thought. For example, I suggest to people, just this moment is a thought that can help people to clear off as you said, the kind of morass of things that go on. Or even just this ball, this pitch, this whatever they're doing, right? This trade for a person in finance. kind of helps them to simplify things. I'm not going to worry about what's going to happen 10 minutes down the road. I'm in this moment. For me, I use this. My mantra is this moment. I can't show you because it's on my phone right now, but I have my phone and my home screen. It just says this moment. Great. And I have memory. I have things that remind me everywhere to just kind of try my best to be in this moment. So I think simplifying language can really be helpful in that, to get rid of all the gunk that's there rather than kind of adding more concepts in the moment.
I like that. I like that because I think there's a lot of narrative around layering and trying to kind of get into a virus system with more programs, right? And if the emotions are overwhelming you, good luck, you don't stand a chance. I mean, I'm personally like a visceral hack guy. Like I'll do lower abdominal breathing and maybe even like tap my abdomen and just kind of like step in, just kind of trigger parasympathetic, and then that works for me, but that's my orientation, right? That might not work for everyone else. So I love that you have different ways of doing it.
I think if someone was willing to do it, I think that would work for most humans. It's been my experience. The things you talked about, it's just a matter of going back to the motivation. If the person's willing to try those things, so. Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, anything that gets your sympathetic nervous system to kind of calm down and your parasympathetic nervous system to kick in is great. Mm-hmm. And, I think with the things you described, belly breathing, that kind of stuff, that's great. If someone's going to be willing to do it, I would recommend that because, what you're talking about is combining the breathing and something physical. I'm going to misquote, but Thich Nhat Hanh, I think, said, is it that you smile because you have joy, or is it that your smile is the source of the joy? So in other words, which comes first? Are you running because you're afraid, or are you afraid because you're running? Mm-hmm. What you do a lot of times dictates how you feel. And so if you're the kind of person, which I know you to be, clearly, because you have this show and because of the questions you're asking, that does things that are about actions and centering yourself, you're likely to feel more in the moment. And the more that we can help other people to understand that that's viable and that's really effective and has a lot of both spirit and true science behind it, I think the better off people's lives will be.
A, thank you for that, and B, awesome. I love the fact that some of this ancient old stuff is just as relevant, just as applicable in modern day everything. I got a question about the alchemists, right? You got guys like, say, Michael Jordan or some of these people that just feed off of it. They actually metabolize it. Like they eat that shit for lunch, right? Like when they're in those moments, it actually like brings out the best in them. Have you noticed a different kind of trait in them? Is there a specific thing that they're doing, or is it just their orientation towards stress? Like those people are fascinating to me.
Yeah. The reason I'm pausing, I'm just thinking about, your question and because I have a lot of respect for the fact that I think what you like to do, and I love this about what your questions is, you're trying to figure out, what's the map here for humans? Like, there is no map for us. We're born, we don't get a map. If we're lucky, we get one parent, maybe two, that's going to show us the way. But we don't get a map. We're trying to figure it out. And so when we look at these people, these unbelievable titans of performance, I agree from what you're insinuating that we can learn from them. Like, what do they do? How did they get there? And I guess there are two things I think about when I work with these people. One, I do believe there are people that are born with this. It's just magic. But there's a term that we talk about in performance psychology, and you can read about it in my book, Life is Sport, but also in books like The Sports Gene, books like Bounce, that the iceberg effect. So, when you see this titan, the Steph Currys, the Michael Jordans out there just doing their thing, you're like, my God. And what you don't see, you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. What you don't see is all the work that went into the mental conditioning. All of the work that went into helping them to face adversity. And I think there's something special. Some people talk about this, and some theoreticians have talked about this as sort of the rage to master, this indestructible desire to be the best. And when I work with people like young prodigies and different, violinists, things like that, the level of frustration that they have when they're not at their game. I don't have that. I don't have the talent to be as frustrated as they get. But I think part of it is also working at it and developing what Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. This idea that as we were talking about, if something goes wrong, I'm going to learn from it. Not if something goes wrong, I'm gonna just fold up my tent and go. It's like another example I have for this is sometimes I lose my keys, or my phone, or my wallet, or my keys and my phone and my wallet, and I'm running to my house looking for them. And sometimes I have the orientation where that says, God, I'm not going to find them, and that hurts me. That makes me less proficient at finding them. But if I really have the orientation, I'm going to find these keys. It changes the way I look for them. It doesn't create magic. It's not going to make them appear. But it changes my approach. I'm more eager. I'm turning over stuff I might not turn over. I'm looking faster. So great titans of sport and business, they have that orientation all the time. They're always looking, and they're always saying, I'm going to find these dang keys. And that's a big difference.
So they're problem solvers, and they look at this thing in front of them, and they have to get the solution set, whether it's where the keys are or whatever. Would it be fair to say that we can't all, maybe Michael Jordan, was born with some sort of special magic genes, and he has that thing, and he's grown into that, and maybe he's done hundreds of thousands of hours of self-discipline and work, and we haven't run his miles, so he's who he is. But the one thing we could all commit to is being learners, right? In this game of life, and using that for performance and self-improvement, is to look at these opportunities as a way to learn about ourselves and learn adversity and just kind of make this the game of life.
1,000%. I love that. And the idea that the word you used, learner, such a hard word, man. God, that's such a hard word. The Japanese philosopher Suzuki once said, and you probably know this quote, but I think it corresponds to what you're talking about. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. Now, I consider you to be an expert. And what I mean by that is, forget about your other podcasts. Your questions alone reveal a level of expertise about what it means to enjoy life and be at your best. But you also have what I would call beginner's mind. You're open to learning from people in all kinds of fields and sharing with your viewers different philosophies and thoughts. And I think if you decide every morning to wake up and say, everybody can teach me something, I'm going to have a beginner's mind, whoever they are, guy on the street, woman in the clothing store, guy I bump into on the bus, wherever it is, you just say, everybody can teach me something, the 5-year-old, the 85-year-old. Having that beginner's mind, however smart you think you are, I think is a tremendous asset in life.
Thank you. And you know what? I think it's also the recipe for healthy aging, right? Because the ego really wants to ride in and be like, listen, man, I got this shit. I got this. I understand everything now. And that's, when Steph Curry has that thought, that's when he misses the game-winning shot, right? It's you empty yourself to be in that space. And so... And you see it all the time.
No doubt. Yeah, I see it all the time. I see it all the time on a basketball court. I see it all the time in my kid's classroom. It's really hard. It's hard to remember how small you are and how big the universe is, and and how we're all really looking constantly for fulfillment, and sometimes it takes us off track.
Yeah, and we have all these kind of cultural accolades and things and badges and medals and white coats and degrees and all sorts of shit that pull us out of that and put us into this expert place. And as soon as we go there, we stop learning, and that's dangerous, right? And so, man, I love where you're coming from. I love your brain. I love this work. I would love to have you back on the show. The book is called Life as Sport, Dr. Jonathan Fader. I'm going to put it up there. I'm assuming it's available everywhere books are sold. How can people get a hold of it? How can people get a hold of you?
So you can get a hold of the book on Amazon, and you can get a hold of it wherever books are sold. It's at most bookstores. And you can find out more about the book and about me at jonathanfader.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Fader, at DRFADER.
Love it, man. I know you got a kid's birthday and you stepped out for this, and I know what it is like to be a dad at a kid's birthday. So I'm not going to hold you from that anymore. You've already.
It's my daughter's school's potluck. And what they're having this like big potluck, and I stepped out, but it's great to talk about the book, and it's great to have the opportunity to get the word out there. But I learned from talking to you and from thinking about your questions, and so I think it's very much to the thing that we are both working towards, which is to get more satisfaction from life and to teach each other and teach others. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on.
Love it, man. Listen, you're always welcome. I love your head and where your brain's at and all of it, and your heart. Like you're in there and you're real. So keep up the good work. Enjoy that potluck, and if you're listening to this or watching this, check out the book. I think this stuff is amazing, and I think it's cutting edge. We're out of this kind of pathology model and now moving into kind of this other dimension of like what we can be and how we can be, and the conversation's really opening up, and you're part of that conversation. You're a voice in that. So thank you. Thanks for doing the work that you do.
Oh, thank you, man, and thanks for having me on, inviting me into your conversation and your world. I really appreciate it.
Cheers. Honored. Hope you dug it. I love that guy. We had a great rapport, and I really think that he's going to be on the show repeatedly because I love his message. Check out over here to my left, if you're watching the video, some previous episodes. You could subscribe here below me. If you're listening, get into wherever your feed is and subscribe and check out what you've missed in the feed. I got a lot of stuff coming your way, and again, let me know where you need help so that we can find the guests that are there to help you. I'm here to help you in your life, and I hope this one did. Let me know what you think. I'll see you next week.